Needless to say, I get a lot of phone calls from people about UFO sightings, about research projects, about ideas on propulsion systems. And I try to be helpful, and it's funny, people are surprised when I answer my own phone, which I do when I'm home. They expect me to have a secretary and a whole coterie of people working for me. Who can afford it? I'm a one-man operation. I'm always surprised when people are surprised that I answer my own phone. I mean, who else is going to answer my phone?
Welcome back to Aperture Atlantic, having a great conversation with Paul Kimball. And Paul, just before the break, we were talking about, some different influences and movies that you enjoyed, and we had just left off talking about some of the movies of the 70s, Star Wars being one of them. When I look back, I mean, maybe I'm dating myself, but again, into the 70s, the movie-going experience seemed to be a little different. There were more single theaters, the big lineups. What are some of your memories from, like, some of those big blockbuster movies, going to see it as a kid with your buddies?
No commercials. Not having, honestly, the biggest memory I have is you could walk in and there's the boom, the new release is coming out, and then the movie. And the first time I'd ever seen commercials before a movie, I spent a year on exchange in Scotland when I was doing my undergrad at the University of Dundee. And we went to see a movie in Dundee, and they were showing commercials, basically. And the Canadians there thought, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. This is horrible. Who would ever be dumb enough to do this? And what audience would ever be stupid enough to sit through it? Well, we do now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I understand why they do it, but I just, you have to, I'm one of those guys, I have to be there early to get the perfect seat, which means I have to be there to sit through all these commercials. But I do remember the lines. I remember going to see, I think Star Wars, my mom took us. We saw the second one before the first one. We were too young to catch the first one. My mom took us to see the Empire Strikes Back. We kind of got in the plot from the comic at the old Cove Theatre on Gottingen Street. Yeah. And I remember the Cove, back when Gottingen was not a street you'd really walk down at night, but the Cove, the casino, and I think there was another one. There was the old Paramount downtown.
That's right.
The Scotia Square cinemas.
Wow, that's
the Highland out on the Rotary, all gone.
That's right. Yeah.
And I know why, again, and I think that's a shame. The Oxford's still there, and I really wish, the Highland was still there. It was a wonderful theater.
It was great.
And now they've got condos. And I think the other one, it would be really nice to have a theater like the Cove or the Casino in central Halifax. I love the multiplexes. I love Bears Lake. I love Dartmouth Crossing.
Right.
The seats are comfy and everything. But there is something to be said for going to see a film in a nice old small theater. And in LA, when I go to LA, I have do a lot of business there. I stay with a friend of mine, a partner, who lives in West Hollywood, and he lives on Fairfax and Beverly, really. And he's about a block away from this old theater. And when I was there, they were showing Blade Runner. The last time I was there, they were showing Blade Runner, and then some Western that I went, holy crap, if I wasn't heading to Vegas tomorrow, I'd be up. But at 12 o'clock showings.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing we don't have in Canada, in Halifax, since Wormwoods went down. That idea of a repertory cinema that shows all independent films, new independent films, which is great. But I think the mistake the people that tried to bring one up over the last few years made was they weren't including guys like me who would love to see those, but put High Noon up there for a week, and you'll pack the theater. So show some old films as well as the new ones. And I think that's what Halifax, the one thing we miss that we had back when I was a kid.
Well, it's funny, you mentioned the Highland. I remember as a kid going to the Highland Theater to see Poltergeist. We had heard about this incredibly frightening movie. It's going to scare your pants off. And I remember going through the lineup, going into the lobby, waiting in the lobby for the show to get out because it was the only theater, and hearing the screams and standing there going, oh, I don't know if we want to go. Just an incredible experience. Yeah. And the multiplexes, like you said, but you kind of miss that a bit. Did that kind of feeling of going to movies like that, did that kind of, in the back of your mind, influence you to go towards film later? That kind of love of it?
No, I got into film largely through stumbling into the dark and accidents and weird coincidences. But I've always loved film. Once I was there, it definitely influences the way I approach making dramatic film and even documentary film, because you want people when they're leaving. I remember sneaking into the Highland to see Red Dawn. It's just this horrible USA Wolverines. This Patrick Swayze, as a young, before Dirty Dancing. And I'd won the tickets on C100 or some radio station, Steve Murphy's call-in show or something. Yeah, Brian Mulroney bad, give me tickets. So my friend and I sneak in because it was rated R, and we were just under the age. So I remember in my parents' house, trying to grow the mustache for like 5 days, and then using my mom's makeup pencil to color it in. Yeah, we're 18. And I swear, the old guy at the door just looked at us and went, whatever, go on in. He knew, we knew. And walking out, and everybody, it was weird. Everybody was like, rah, rah, yeah, And you realize about 10 years later, wow, that was an incredibly jingoistic, very bad, jingoistic movies are fine, but very bad jingoistic movie. Yeah. But at the time, it was like, yeah, Wolverine, collie bastards die. And, you don't get, there is something about the multiplexes, you're right, you don't quite get that because you all mill out with 3 other films. So yeah, Lord of the Rings was great. Oh, wasn't that romantic comedy charming? Yeah. And then everyone goes to the bathroom and leaves. And I remember leaving Star Wars or Red Dawn or a Blair Witch Project I saw at the Oxford. Same things, like some girl next to me was some high school student, didn't even know her, and she grabbed my arm, which you could do in a multiplex, fair enough. It's like, Adam, it says, oh my God, never, screaming. And then everybody walking out, and this buzz on the sidewalk out in front, and people would stand there and actually talk to people they didn't even know. Yeah. And she went, sorry, and I went, no, it's no problem, thank you. And my fiance at the time said, hey. So, that's part of what's missing, and when you're making films, you should be trying to make films that elicit that response in people. So it's good that guys like me and you and others can remember what it felt like to walk out after seeing Poltergeist or Blair Witch or Red Dawn, and it's like, wow. That's what you want. You want people to walk out and go, wow. Like, I walked out at Dark Knight and I went, wow. Actually, I was going wow about 20 times during the film. It's like, wow. That's what you always want when you make any film.
Now, you talked about, we're talking about this, and you mentioned some of the theaters, Casino, the Highland, Paramount, Wormwoods. Given the state of the way filmmaking is in Atlantic Canada, and we're trying to promote local filmmakers, is there an opportunity being missed here? What do you think somebody might be able to do in terms of maybe coming up with an idea and maybe building something around a single screen theater, making it an experience?
I think it has to come from the private sector. I think people look to, the obvious thing would be say, well, maybe the government should do something like that to help promote filmmakers. And to me, that would be a non-starter from the beginning. It has to be a private sector venture. And yeah, no, absolutely. And when you say private sector, then it's like, well, okay, can we make money off of it? Right. And I think if it's run properly, a combination perhaps of local films, independent films, foreign films that you might not see at the multiplex for more than an hour, and older films, that repertory cinema kind of thing. So High Noon, along with whatever this thing from Spain is, along with my film, sure, whatever. Right. And then you broaden your audience. I don't think any one of those 3 things could succeed on its own. I think if you put them together, it's kind of like the way the music industry used to work. You'd run showcases at the East Coast Music Awards. If you put nothing but alternative bands up in Sydney, you're probably not going to get a full house. You put an alternative band, I remember I did one in '94. It was a fiddle band, a country band, a bluegrass band. The place was packed. And I had some little old lady, literally, come up to me afterwards, our set, and say, again with the arm, always with the arm. I just wanted to say I really liked your music, your set. That's great. She never would have come to see us if we had just been doing an alternative thing. So I think if you bring those 3 things together, that's the way forward. And if I had $10 million, I'd do it myself.
Well, we'll talk more music and UFOs right after the break. You're watching Aperture Atlantic on Eastlink Television.